My friend's mother was in tears, then softly said, "Take me anywhere. Name is Ryan. Am 24 years old. Employed in the field of auto detailing. And reside independently just outside of Columbus, Ohio. Not be glamorous. I earn a respectable income and tend to maintain a low profile. Been acquainted with Tyler since our high school days. Connection deepened through our shared love for music, classic trucks, and the thrill of narrowly escaping trouble before it escalated. Few years ago, but we've consistently maintained our connection, exchanging quick messages from time to time. Evening of last Thursday, at approximately 8 p.m., I received a call from him. Text nor a voice note. Something was amiss. Voice trembling. You assist me with a significant request? Moment. Hello. How can I assist you today? It is my mother. Me approximately 10 minutes ago. Shedding tears. No. It was completely hysterical. Was unable to comprehend a significant portion of her statements. Return her call. But she is not responding. Feeling quite overwhelmed. Couch. That to be the case. She appeared to be. Am unable to make it there. Currently located in Nashville. Minutes away from the house. You kindly check on her. Please? Am departing now. On a hoodie. Took my keys. And departed. Journey to their location was serene. Yet my thoughts were anything but. Not seen Claire, his mother, in more than a year. Not the kind of person to succumb to such an emotional breakdown. Be a significant issue at hand. Driveway. I noticed that the porch light was illumined. Is no indication of activity within. Sound of my shoes crunching on the gravel path resonating around me. Eyes on her. She sat on a porch swing. Dressed in pajama pants and an oversized t-shirt. Arms wrapped around her knees. Eyes appeared red and swollen. Hair was disheveled. Identify me. Voice faltered. To me. Are you doing well? She did not provide a response. She averted her gaze, hastily wiped her face, and then rose to her feet. Her body swayed gently, suggesting she may not have eaten or slept in days. May I enter? I inquired. She acknowledged with a nod and proceeded to open the door. The residence was serene, excessively silent. There was an absence of television, music, and even the familiar sounds of the kitchen that I once recalled. Only silence and the weighty atmosphere of sorrow. I accompanied her to the living room. She settled into her seat, grasping a throw pillow as if it were a protective barrier. I remained patient. He has departed, she stated at last. He simply gathered his belongings and left. I refrained from making any comments. He mentioned that he encountered someone younger and more attractive, expressing a desire not to squander his life any longer. Following a span of 12 years. Just like that. Once more, her voice faltered. She averted her gaze and focused on the view outside the window. I believed we were in a good place. It may not be flawless, but it is satisfactory. At this moment, I find myself feeling utterly empty. I perched on the edge of the armchair, uncertain of how to articulate my thoughts. What can one possibly say in response to something like that? She then gazed directly at me, her eyes shimmering with tears, and softly whispered, "Transport me to any destination." I blinked. Could you please clarify? Anywhere. I am unable to be present at this moment. Such behavior is not acceptable here. Tonight is not suitable. She wasn't seeking a permanent escape from reality. Merely from the heaviness of the night. The act of betrayal. The stillness of the home that abruptly seemed vast and frigid. In that moment, I acted without thought. I rose to my feet and declared, "All right, let's proceed." She nodded slowly, wiped her face once more, took a sweater from the coat rack, and accompanied me out the door. Our destination was uncertain. All we knew was that we were embarking on a journey away from here. There was minimal conversation throughout the drive. She occupied the passenger seat, her legs drawn up onto the seat, arms securely wrapped around herself. I frequently glanced over to ensure her well-being. Yet she never met my gaze. Simply gazed out the window, as if the world beyond had gone unnoticed. I was uncertain about the appropriate destination for her. I just completed a drive. Following approximately 20 minutes of tranquility and desolate roads, I arrived at a serene overlook area adjacent to Hoover Reservoir. The distance was short, yet the tranquility was palpable. A broad perspective showcasing the water, a bench, several trees, and an absence of people. I parked the vehicle, turned off the engine, and glanced over. Would you like to take a moment to step outside? I inquired. She gave a slight nod and proceeded to open the door. The atmosphere was cool and moist, characteristic of the moments that follow sunset. She took a few steps toward the railing and leaned against it. I maintained a respectful distance, allowing her the space to breathe. She inhaled deeply and released her breath gradually. We visited this place once, she remarked softly. In the past, he brought me here following a disagreement, expressing his desire to begin anew. Expressed all the appropriate sentiments. I placed my trust in him. I chose not to respond. I was uncertain whether she required verbal communication or simply the presence of someone close by. She continued, I gave him everything. Tom, affection, dedication. I excused actions that perhaps I should not have. I convinced myself of my good fortune in having him. And now I feel utterly foolish. She dabbed at her face once more, driven more by frustration than by sadness at this point. I sensed a change in her tone. Beyond mere heartbreak, there lies a simmering anger beneath the surface. Are you aware of what causes the greatest pain? She inquired. He didn't shed a tear. Didn't show any sign of emotion. Simply walked away as if I had never been significant to him. I approached with intention. Your presence was significant. You do. She turned her head and regarded me for the first time since we departed the house. Her eyes held a glassy yet unwavering gaze. What brings you here, Ryan? I took a moment to pause. Tyler requested that I check in on you. That is not what I intended to convey. I remained silent. She subtly shook her head and redirected her gaze towards the water. I apologize. I am currently experiencing a lack of focus. There's no need for an apology. You have the right to be. She emitted a dry laugh. Permitted. That is amusing. For many years, I sought approval to experience any emotions. A lengthy pause ensued. She then whispered once more, her voice softer this time. We appreciate your presence. I acknowledged with a nod. You are not required to return home this evening. We can locate accommodations and arrange for a meal. It is essential to take a moment to clear your mind. She regarded me with uncertainty, yet eventually gave a slow nod. Indeed. Understood. We returned to the vehicle. I conducted a search for a nearby location and discovered a quaint lakeside area just 15 minutes away. Simple and straightforward. A charming roadside location featuring wooden decks and a picturesque view of the water. The check-in process was smooth, and we were assigned a double room without any inquiries from the receptionist. She positioned herself on the bed nearest to the window and gazed out at the scenery. I have placed an order for our meal, which includes burgers, fries, and 2 bottles of water. She hardly engaged with hers, merely nibbled at the bun. Would you like to engage in further conversation? I inquired. Alternatively, you may choose to rest. She reclined against the headboard. Let's discuss this further tomorrow. This evening, I seek a moment of tranquility to quiet the turmoil in my mind. Then take a moment to rest. I suggested. I will be here, ready to assist you. She nodded and draped the blanket over her legs. I chose the other bed and reclined. Still in my clothes. The television was turned off. The lights were dimmed. And for a brief moment, the only sound that filled the room was her soft breathing. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I caught her voice, soft and subtle, like a thought escaping her lips. Thank you for staying with us. I chose not to respond. I allow the silence to convey my thoughts. Precipitation. The first detail that caught my attention upon opening my eyes. The gentle, rhythmic sound of rain tapping against the window. It wasn't burdensome, rather. It served as a subtle reminder that the world continued to turn. Still vibrant and alive, even when everything within felt immobilized. I gradually sat up. Claire had already risen from her slumber. She sat at the edge of her bed, gazing out the window. She had transformed her look, now donning jeans and a light gray long-sleeve shirt. Her hair was styled in a relaxed bun. From behind, she appeared to be someone striving to maintain composure and, in some way, succeeding. Good morning, I remarked, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. She turned her head, a gentle smirk gracing her lips. Your snoring is noticeable. I emitted a brief chuckle. Are you certain it wasn't the refrigerator? She shook her head in disapproval. No, it's certainly you. I extended my body, feeling my back release with 3 distinct cracks. How are you doing today? She rose from her seat and made her way to the window. He took a moment to gather his thoughts before responding. Feeling somewhat better, though still not great compared to yesterday. I acknowledged with a nod. That is noteworthy. A prolonged silence ensued. I took my time with it. I assumed that if she wished to engage in conversation, she would initiate it herself. Upon our departure from the inn, the clock had just struck 10. I inquired whether she would like to join me for breakfast or return home. But she merely shook her head in response. She replied, "Not yet. I am not ready to return there at this time." I gazed at her. She had ceased her tears. She appeared weary yet resolute, embodying the essence of someone who had reached a silent conclusion and was steadfast in her commitment. Very well, I acknowledged. What is the next destination? She nonchalantly shrugged her shoulders. Let us proceed with the drive. That is precisely what we accomplished. For the initial 30 minutes, we refrained from activating the radio. The windshield wipers operated with a consistent rhythm. The rain serves as a persistent backdrop to the quietude that envelops us. However, it was not uncomfortable. It simply was. After approximately an hour, we exited the main road to refuel. I refueled the tank while she went inside. She emerged with 2 coffees and a bag of trail mix in hand. She mentioned it was for the road. We continued our journey on the road. Eventually, she lowered the window and extended her arm into the breeze. Her hair was tousled by the wind. She glanced in my direction and offered a genuine smile for the first time. Are you always this skilled at dropping everything and vanishing? I shook my head in disbelief. Far from it. I typically organize my lunch breaks. She remarked, leaning back. It seems we could both benefit from a period of aimlessness. At approximately noon, we arrived in Hocking Hills. I did not plan it. The signs emerged, prompting me to make the turn. A small trailhead was discovered. The car was parked, and we proceeded on foot. The rain had ceased by that time. Yet the surroundings remained moist, exuding the rich scent of earth and foliage. Our conversation was minimal during the hike. We strolled together in quiet companionship. The terrain presented some steep sections, yet it remained manageable overall. Ultimately, we arrived at a clearing that provided a stunning view of the valley below. Endless trees reaching towards the horizon, fog spiraling upwards through them like wisps of smoke. Claire positioned herself at the edge of the railing. Her arms extended broadly as if she were embracing the very essence of existence. I haven't felt like myself in years, she said softly. I did not respond. I found myself at a loss for words that would re-so Ryan appropriately. We took a seat on a nearby wooden bench. She engaged in conversation more this time. It is not concerning the act of betrayal. That has been addressed. However, regarding the years that preceded it, the gradual decline of respect, the sensation of vanishing within the confines of another's expectations, I continued to strive for a reduction in more independent, quieter, more objective, in an effort to ensure he stayed. She expressed her thoughts. He departed regardless. She directed her gaze towards me. I felt invisible for an extended period. Ryan. I was unaware of the moment I ceased to exist. That re-so Ryaned with me. I was at a loss for words. I chose not to express my thoughts. I have just listened. We remained out there for an additional hour. We then returned to the car and continued our drive as the sun began to set. A charming little lodge was discovered. A location characterized by pinewood walls and vintage quilts adorning the beds. Simple yet inviting. Secure. We placed an order for food to be delivered to our room. 1 pizza accompanied by 2 sodas. She chuckled when the delivery person remarked, "Enjoy your romantic getaway." I explained to him that it is not the case. He simply winked and then walked away. We dined while seated cross-legged on our beds, observing the flames dance in the quaint stone fireplace situated across the room. She retrieved a deck of cards from her purse. We engaged in a game of Go Fish, reminiscent of our teenage years. It possessed a certain simplicity. At some point following the 3rd round, I noticed her observing me. "Could you please clarify?" I inquired with a half smile. She glanced down before raising her gaze once more. Thank you for your kind words. And patient. I was unaware of the extent to which I longed for that. I was uncertain about how to respond. I maintained her gaze. She then added, in a softer tone this time. You evoke a sense of femininity within me. Not merely a leftover from someone else. I rose from my seat and approached the window. She accompanied me, positioning herself next to me. The woods beyond were shrouded in darkness, enveloped in silence, and retained the moisture from the day's rainfall. I'm not sure what this is, she said. I wish to preserve its integrity. At this moment, being here brings a sense of fulfillment that I haven't experienced in quite some time. I directed my attention towards her. I feel the same way. She approached with intention. Gradually. Take your time. Remain calm. Only intimacy. Her hand grasped mine. She leaned in. It was at that moment that we shared a kiss. Not driven by passion. Not driven by desire. However, from a place of collective vulnerability. Depleted of healing resources. On that night, we shared the same bed. She nestled next to me. Rest your head on my chest. Fingers gliding in circular motions across my arm. Neither of us uttered the word love. That was not the case. It was a source of comfort. It was the sensation of reclaiming one's humanity. Moments before succumbing to slumber, she softly whispered, I appreciate you for reminding me of the essence of being alive. The following morning, I arose before she did. The room remained shrouded in dim light. The heavy curtains effectively blocked most of the sunlight. For a brief moment, I simply lay there, attuned to the sound of her breathing. She appeared serene, snuggled beneath the quilt. Her hair is messy. The face appears soft and relaxed. It felt surreal. It seemed as though we had transcended all boundaries. Key responsibilities, discomfort, the history that has shaped us. And discovered a bubble untouched by the world. I quietly slipped out of bed, put on a hoodie, stepped outside onto the quaint wooden deck that provided a view of the surrounding woods. The atmosphere was chilly and invigorating. The melodic chirping of birds resounded from the trees nearby. For the first time in a considerable while, I experienced a sense of freedom from obligations and tasks. I remained still, focusing on my breath. She emerged approximately 20 minutes later, enveloped in a cozy blanket, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. One intended for her, one for myself. You vanished, she murmured gently. I didn't intend to disturb your rest. She passed me the mug and rested against the railing. I had forgotten the sensation of silence like this. I acknowledged with a nod. It is quite pleasant. She took a sip of her coffee. It is peculiar. It seems as though our connection has spanned a lifetime. This marks our initial encounter. I understand that. A lengthy pause ensued. She turned to me and asked, do you regret last night? I shook my head in disbelief. Negative. Not at all. I feel the same way. She offered a smile. It was a different expression than the weary, strained look I had observed on her face the day before. This one was genuine, soft. Here you go. We have made the decision to extend our stay by 1 additional day. It wasn't due to any specific plans, rather. It was the mutual desire to preserve the essence of what we were experiencing at that moment. We traversed the woods, discussed trivial matters, preferred films, music originating from the 1990s. On 4-2 Ryan initial encounters, I found myself laughing much more than I anticipated. At one moment, we paused at a quaint waterfall. She removed her shoes, she rolled up her jeans, and entered the frigid water. You are exhibiting irrational behavior, I remarked. She splashed water on me. Enter, if you dare. I have done so. The temperature was extremely low. We remained for approximately 2 minutes before retreating back to the rocks. Shivering and laughing like children, she reclined on a smooth stone, allowing the sunlight to warm her face. I feel like I'm 25 again, she said. Perhaps simply not 45, I remarked, somewhat impulsively. That you don't appear to be 45. She opened one and cast a glance my way. Exercise caution. Your charm is truly captivating. We shared a laugh, but soon fell into silence. The moment was one where everything seemed to hang in the balance. We found ourselves as 2 individuals in an isolated location. barefoot and drenched. The warmth of the sun gracing our skin. No history in the path. Subsequently, upon returning to the lodge, we placed an order for dinner from a nearby diner. Fried chicken, creamy mashed potatoes, and a slice of pie. We enjoyed a meal in bed while a movie played softly in the background. I can't recall the title of the movie. I recall her sitting nearby, her shoulder touching mine, our hands lightly grazing every few moments as if confirming that everything was still all right. As the film concluded, the lights were subdued, and the fire flickered gently. She glanced in my direction and remarked, "You make me feel like I'm madder again." "You certainly do," I mentioned. "You consistently did." She expressed her desire for this not to be a fantasy. I prefer to be authentic rather than pretend we are something we are not. However, I am reluctant to relinquish this simply due to its complexity. I'm not requesting an eternity. I stated, "I simply wish to be present with you for the duration of this moment." She leaned in and kissed me. Deliberately, confidently, with a sense of stability. That evening stood apart from the initial one. It transcended the notions of comfort and pain. It involved a mutual decision, with a clear understanding of the potential outcomes. We understood that it was not sustainable. We understood that we were not designed for what lay ahead. However, we were acutely aware that this fleeting, exquisite moment belonged to us. We spent the night engaged in conversation, sharing kisses, and embracing one another. At one moment, she leaned her forehead against mine and softly whispered, "I needed this more than I realized." Not the intimacy the entity desired. The individual is being detained. "You are worthy of that every single day," I stated. I have lost touch with the experience of being a woman. Not a spouse. Not a parent. A woman. Simply put. I chose not to respond. I gently drew her nearer. We drifted off to sleep, entwined in each other's embrace. No alarms. There are no clocks present. There is no urgency to depart. Two individuals, isolated from the world, granting one another the opportunity to heal. 2 days later, we departed from the lodge. Though unspoken, the sentiment lingered between us. The conclusion, it lingered in the atmosphere like the soft embrace of morning fog. Lightweight yet unmistakable. There was no dispute. There is no tension. There was a subtle acknowledgement that our experience was contained within a unique sphere. That bubble was not destined to endure indefinitely. We packed in silence, meticulously folding clothes and placing toothbrushes back into travel bags with a sense of importance. Claire lingered by the mirror, meticulously adjusting her hair, perfecting her earrings, and then simply gazing at her reflection. "I look different," she said softly. I raised my gaze. "You do. More content." She smiled. Yet there was an underlying sadness in her expression. Perhaps a bit lighter. "I feel like my true self once more. Or perhaps someone I overlooked in my memory." We completed our checkout just after 10 a.m. The receptionist at the front desk offered us a subtle smile. Yet neither of us responded. We were gradually returning to the realm of reality. The journey back was serene. There will be no music on this occasion. The only sounds are the road beneath us and the musings in our minds. Claire gazed out the window, and I allowed her to do so. I preferred not to fill the silence with meaningless chatter. This silence felt profound. Upon our arrival at her residence, she remained still for a moment. She sat there with her hands neatly folded in her lap, gazing at the porch as if it were the property of another. "I'm not ready to go inside just yet," she remarked. I acknowledged with a nod. "We are available to stay here for as long as you require." However, after a brief moment, she released her seatbelt. Negative response. I must confront it. I must proceed with this task. She opened the door, stepped outside, and then hesitated. "Would you like to join me?" "Certainly." Inside, everything remained precisely as we had left it. The atmosphere had a distinct quality. However, lightweight. The sorrow had receded sufficiently to allow light to enter. She moved deliberately through the living room, her fingers grazing the edge of the couch and the picture frames on the shelf. She then directed her attention towards me. She mentioned that she had been contemplating concerning all matters. Indeed, I cannot deny the authenticity of this experience. I prefer not to. However, I understand that this is not something we can manipulate into a different form and anticipate it to align properly. I acknowledged with a nod. I am aware. She inhaled deeply. Your support has revitalized my spirit. Seeking. Human being. I am truly at a loss for words to express my gratitude for that. However, I am aware that we cannot continue in this manner. I approached with intention. You are not obligated to provide anything to me. She stated that it's not about owing. It revolves around integrity. Your presence was essential to me. Your presence was noted. You remained. You provided me with something truly beautiful. However, it is time for me to establish my independence. I observed her closely. Truly observed. She exhibited greater strength. More stable. Her eyes were not brimming with tears at this moment. They were explicit. Concentrated. I understand. I replied. She made contact. Seized my hand. Maintained it for an extended duration. This will remain with me. She whispered. Everything. Each minute. I feel the same way. She embraced me warmly. Compact. Cozy. Conclusion. She then leaned back and placed a kiss on my cheek. I will be fine moving forward. I had faith in her. I approached the door. Gazed back for a final moment. She stood in the center of the living room. With arms crossed. Beaming with joy. Only a small amount. I entered my vehicle and proceeded to drive home. The roads appeared unchanged. Yet an internal transformation had occurred within me. Not in a sorrowful manner. Not in a manner that suggests despair. Merely distinct. It felt as though I had experienced something genuine and unique. And now I was faced with the necessity of releasing it. The following day, Tyler sent me a text message. Only a single line. Thank you for reviewing. She mentioned that your assistance was invaluable. I chose not to respond. I found it challenging to encapsulate everything in a text message. Perhaps one day I will share everything with him. Perhaps I would not. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. Return address is not provided. A simple folded note enclosed within. You have reminded me of my identity as a woman. I still have time. That love, no matter how fleeting, is valuable to experience. Thank you very much. Consistently. D. I carefully folded the note and tucked it away in the back of my drawer. There has been no communication since that time. That is perfectly acceptable. What we shared was never intended to endure indefinitely. For a span of 2 weeks. It encompassed all that mattered.